If you often feel scattered or pulled in many directions, you are not alone. Many people quietly struggle with the feeling that their interests are too wide or their focus is inconsistent. Society is quick to label this as a lack of discipline or commitment, which can slowly turn curiosity into self-doubt. From an early age, we are taught that success comes from specialization. Choose one path, narrow your focus, and stay there. When someone struggles to do that, they may feel broken or behind, even though not all minds are designed to move in straight, predictable lines. Some minds are built to explore patterns across many areas, rather than dig into one narrow track. If you've always been curious about different subjects, you may notice that you learned quickly at the beginning. Connect ideas naturally, but feel drained when forced to stay in one lane for too long. Modern culture often misunderstands this type of mind. It rewards speed, labels, and visible progress, while psychology recognizes that intelligence develops in different structures. This difference in thinking is one of the core ideas explored here on Purely Psychologic. If you have multiple interests, you may have been told to just pick one thing and stick to it. Over time, that message can quietly erode confidence. You may begin to believe your curiosity is a flaw, when in reality it may be your greatest cognitive strength. Research in psychology and learning science shows that people who explore broadly often develop strong pattern recognition. They're able to transfer insight from one domain to another, which becomes increasingly valuable as systems grow more complex and interconnected. You may notice that you understand ideas faster when they are explained through relationships rather than isolated facts. Your mind naturally looks for connections. This is not distraction. It is a form of integrative thinking that operates below the surface. In fast-paced environments, this thinking style can feel uncomfortable. You may compare yourself to people who seem to progress in straight lines. But linear progress is not the only kind of progress that exists or matters. Psychology describes this as a multi-dimensional cognitive style. Instead of building depth in a single vertical line, you build several lines and connect them over time. Those connections eventually form a perspective that cannot be easily replicated. This kind of thinking is often invisible early on. It does not produce immediate results, which is why it is frequently misunderstood. But its value increases with time, especially in uncertain or rapidly changing environments. If you have ever felt behind despite constantly learning, this may explain why. Your growth is happening across dimensions rather than along one measurable path, and traditional systems struggle to recognize that form of development. You may also notice that rigid structures exhaust you. Fixed routines can feel limiting, not because you lack discipline, but because your motivation responds more to meaning than repetition. Understanding this creates a subtle but powerful shift. You stop asking what is wrong with you and start asking how your mind actually works. At Purely Psychologic, this reframing is central to how we approach human behavior. Instead of seeing inconsistency, you begin to see adaptability. Instead of indecision, you recognize exploration. Your past choices start to make sense when viewed through this psychological lens. People with this mindset often excel in roles that require synthesis. They connect ideas, people, or systems that others overlook. Their strength lies in seeing the whole rather than isolated parts. As the world becomes more complex, fast answers lose reliability. Thoughtful integration becomes more valuable, and this is often where multidimensional thinkers naturally stand out. If you have felt out of place in traditional paths, it does not mean you are unfit for success. It may simply mean those paths were not designed with your cognitive structure in mind. Understanding this does not mean avoiding commitment. It means choosing commitments that allow integration. Depth still exists, but it may look different than what society traditionally rewards. Curiosity is not the opposite of focus. In many cases, it is the foundation of insight. When you stop fighting your natural structure, energy returns and learning begins to feel lighter again. This clarity does not appear overnight. Years of misunderstanding take time to undo, but awareness is the first step toward confidence. With understanding, self-trust slowly replaces self-criticism. If this perspective resonates with you, you are not broken or late. You are developing in a way that is harder to measure but deeply valuable. The world is gradually beginning to recognize this truth. Your task is not to shrink yourself into a simpler shape. It is to understand your structure and use it intentionally. This philosophy guides the conversations we share on Purely Psychologic. Psychology does not ask you to become someone else. It asks you to understand yourself accurately, because from accurate understanding direction naturally emerges. If this explanation gave language to something you have always felt, you are not alone. Many people carry this experience quietly, assuming they must either adapt or fail. But there is another option. You can build a life that works with your mind rather than against it, and that choice begins with understanding rather than correction. Growth for this type of mind often happens in phases. Periods of exploration are followed by periods of consolidation. What looks like drifting from the outside is often preparation on the inside. Insights accumulate slowly until they connect. When they do, progress can appear sudden, even though it was built over years. This is why comparing timelines rarely helps. When you trust your natural rhythm, frustration gives way to alignment. Confidence stabilizes, creativity deepens, and decisions feel more grounded and intentional. This is why we emphasize clarity over motivation on purely psychologic. Understanding creates sustainable change, not pressure or forced productivity. If this video helped you see yourself more clearly, consider subscribing to Purely Psychologic for more psychology-based insights that explain the mind without judgment or labels.